about Pramipexole. I'm going to get right into it. I'm going to explain everything you need to know. We're just going to call it Prami for short because that's what everybody calls it anyway. But let's jump right into it and get a complete understanding of what it is, how it works, etc. So Prami is actually a dopamine agonist, all right, and it's used in the medical community to treat Parkinson's disease and restless leg syndrome. All right. It's also been found to be quite helpful in the treatment of bipolar, depression, things of that nature. Now, also, it's still being researched for its ability to treat certain types of headaches and helping antidepressant users that are having some sexual dysfunction issues. Now, why are we talking about it? Well, we're talking about it within the bodybuilding community because of its ability to affect dopamine and prolactin. All right. This makes it an interesting ancillary for both on-cycle and post-cycle use. So I'm going to get into all of that. Let's start with prolactin, though. We've got to have an understanding of what prolactin is. Prami can actually inhibit prolactin, and in order to fully understand how this is going to benefit you, we have to first take a look at what exactly prolactin is. Prolactin is a female hormone protein. All right. Now, the levels are going to increase during pregnancy. But in spite of the fact that it's mostly associated with women, prolactin is also found in men because it spikes after ejaculation and after having children. So researchers still don't even know why Mother Nature even gives males prolactin. It's no clue, all right? But we can theorize about this, which we love to do, and it's likely due to keeping the human population under control, according to some, all right? I don't know. I'm just kind of repeating what I hear. So when a male ejaculates after sex, he gets satisfied thanks to the changes in both prolactin, which is going to increase, and dopamine, which is going to go down. After this occurs, and you'll notice this as a man, you're going to lose interest in sex for a period of time. Some people a lot less than others, probably depending on quite a few factors. But as a matter of fact, this is why men sometimes you will kind of be to yourself or kind of get away from the woman that you're with. There could be a multitude of reasons, but this is, if you wonder why sometimes you feel that way, well, it's a natural thing. It's nothing that anybody did wrong or anything else. It should also be noted that women release their own hormone, which connects them to males after sex, and that's called oxytocin. All right. Males also release this, but they handle it quite differently. So just keep that in mind. This point of no interest after sex in males is what we call the refractory period. And until prolactin starts to drop back down, the man's just not going to have as much interest in sex. Now, Prami is going to inhibit prolactin from rising. All right. And that's going to make the refractory period a lot shorter for men. As a result, you can expect your libido to be a lot more frequent, your urge for sex, and whenever you use Prami. So these types of prolactin inhibitors can be benefit in many ways for you. Let's talk about what we're really here for, though, and how that translates into bodybuilding. Now let's talk about dopamine. Apart from inhibiting prolactin, Prami is going to work as a dopamine agonist. So those of you that are stuck in depression or addicts who can get a high without doing sinful things, for example, since dopamine is a chemical in the brain, what it does is it transmits impulses while forming epinephrine. All right. So many people in our society have major dopamine issues, and you can just see it in many different instances. You'll see people with bipolar disorders, addictions, nervous system conditions like Parkinson's disease, things like that. So how does dopamine work in simple terms? Well, let's say you have a piece of pizza, quite greasy pizza, for example, or a burger from a fast food joint, something like that. You bite into it and you get a feeling of relief. But this is not your brain saying this is good foods. It's actually getting you a blast of dopamine. So the same goes for the situation when you experience an orgasm with the person that you just met at the, or whatever the case may be. You get a blast of dopamine, but it does not apply to purely physiological cases, since you can get the same dopamine rush in other instances, like let's say you're gambling and you get a big win or something like that. But all in all, if we understand how dopamine works with prolactin, it gives us an idea of how our brain works. When prolactin goes up, dopamine goes down. which is what happens when we have an orgasm. On the other hand, as soon as prolactin goes back down, then dopamine is going to go up, so we want to go out and have sex again. Now let's talk about the use on a steroid cycle and during post-cycle therapy. So let's start with dopamine again. If we don't feel the need to bite into that pizza or burger that I was talking about, then it can help to keep your appetite under control. Since athletes always want to eat clean, then this is a good thing. It makes dieting a lot easier. Now, it's the turn of prolactin. When a bodybuilder runs certain anabolic steroids that are progestin-based, something like trenbolone, for example, they can get a rise in prolactin level, near nandrolones as well. This could contribute to a loss in libido and many other side effects. So, for instance, many times we have seen gynecomastia develop due to trenbolone use. Why? Well, that's because the user abused the steroid for long periods of times without controlling prolactin levels. Luckily, Prami is going to help inhibit this prolactin rise and avoid side effects associated with this hormone. So, when an athlete may use as far as anabolic steroids, there's always going to be that coming off part, the post-cycle therapy, where you're going to have a massive drop in libido. So, it's important to use Prami during post-cycle therapy and or a bridge because it can help keep your libido strong until your HPTA reaches homeostasis. Now, obviously, if you're on TRT, it's going to be a different story in terms of your post-cycle therapy, but we're talking about people that are PCT. So this is the reason why many of those who cycle steroids will use Prami during or after the cycle. And in addition to that, Prami may be used by those who just want sexual benefits or help with appetite suppression as well. Now, let's talk about some side effects. Prami does have some harsh side effects, all right? The biggest complaint seems to be stomach issues and also causing lethargy. The best way to prevent this is to run Prami before bed with maybe a little bit of light food and water, all right? You need to keep the doses where it should be. Don't try to go too high with Prami because you don't need it and it's going to cause you unwanted side effects. Trust me, I assure you, all right? Too many people that I see over so many years want to run it too high. Look, a little bit will go a long way. One of the biggest issues I have with steroid users is that they always think more is always better, and it's not. It just doesn't work that way, okay? Now, some people have found it unbearable, and some people, they absolutely love it. It just needs to be eased into. The half-life is shorter than something like Caber or Dostanex. It's only 8 to 12 hours. Where, with Caber or Dostanex, you're taking it once every 3 days. Now, your dosing needs to be extremely conservative, especially when you're first starting it, all right? Some people say to run it several times a day. Some people say to run it too high of a dose. I recommend to dose it every other day to start and to only start with 0.25 milligrams, something like that, and work your way up. Some people will end up being at 1 to 2 milligrams a day. I would not go any higher than that. It's completely unnecessary. I would ease into it. 0.25 milligrams maybe for the first couple days, ease up to 0.5. Pyramid your way up. Everybody's going to go about it different. I can't tell you exactly how to run it because everybody's tolerance is going to be different. Some people do go up to 2.5 milligrams per day. That's just going to be based on your tolerance level. I have no issue with people doing it that high. I have no issue with people starting it a little bit higher as long as you know you can handle it. Just be careful. Look, you can always increase it, but once you go too high, you're kind of stuck there and it's like, oh no, I'm kind of screwed here now. So always start a little bit lower and work your way up instead of starting off with too much and then having to go through a bunch of BS and work your way down. All right? Just remember the concept of more is not always better, especially when we're talking about steroids, PEDs, ancillaries, whatever the case may be, post-cycle drugs. Just be careful, use your head, and don't go overboard.